The 4-day ceasefire is underway in the Israel-Gaza war. The temporary truce started at 7 a.m. Gaza time. The ceasefire is part of a hostage swap deal. There will be no fighting, but Israeli troops will remain stationed in their positions across the Gaza Strip. Some 300 aid trucks carrying food, water and medicine are also expected to enter Gaza every day till the truce lasts. Later today, Hamas will release the first batch of Israel hostages. It will be a group of 13 people, mostly women and children, at 4 p.m. Gaza time. The released hostages are likely to be Israeli citizens or people with dual nationalities. The 37 other captives will be released over the next 4 days. In exchange, Israel will release 150 Palestinian detainees.
Before heading inside.
The truce deal between Israel and Hamas reached after mediation by Qatar. This will facilitate the release of at least 50 hostages held by Hamas militants in exchange for at least 150 Palestinians jailed in Israel. Now, Israel has shared a list with details like their age, gender, and the allegations the prisoners are facing. Several Palestinians have for long alleged that Israeli security officials arrested their relatives and loved ones without valid evidence. Several mothers of Palestinian prisoners in Jerusalem and the West Bank have pinned their hopes on the prisoner swap deal. The Cuban president led a march to the U.S. embassy in Havana, accusing Israel of committing quote-unquote genocide against Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. Sporting Palestinian flags and banners, the crowd accompanying the Cuban president chanted "Free Palestine" slogans. Cuba has been a strong backer of the Palestinian cause for decades. It has trained over 200 Palestinian doctors and does not have diplomatic ties with Israel. The Palestinian Football Club in Santiago, Palestino, paid tribute to the Palestinian victims who lost their lives in the ongoing war with Israel. Palestinian fans cheered for their team during the Chilean National Championship football match with Everton at the LA Cisterna Municipal Stadium in Santiago. The struggle continues to rescue the 41 trapped workers from the collapsed Uttarakhand tunnel. The final stage of the operation was stopped overnight on Thursday after the drilling machine stopped. Experts involved in the mission say that they are just few meters away from reaching the trapped workers. Officials say the 48-meter point has been reached by the drill, but the drilling had to be stopped after cracks appeared in the platform on which the machine is placed. The platform has now been stabilized and the operations are set to resume shortly. If there are no more stoppages, the workers are expected to be out by afternoon today. Anti-immigrant protesters clashed with riot police in Dublin after a knife attack on Thursday. 2 children and 2 adults are being treated for injuries sustained in the attack. The riots were triggered by social media reports alleging that the assailant was a foreign national. A bus was set ablaze as the situation escalated. Police pushed back protesters near the scene of the stabbing. Protesters hit the streets in Netherlands to oppose the electoral victory of far-right leader Geert Wilders. Now, the election results have upset the Muslim and LGBTQ community. Police had to step in to break up clashes between the protesters and supporters of Wilders' Freedom Party, PVV. PVV had previously called for ban on mosques and Quran in the Netherlands. Muslims make up around 5% of the Dutch population of almost 18 million people. Tens of thousands of protesters gathered in Nepal's capital city of Kathmandu on Thursday, demanding the restoration of the monarchy abolished 15 years ago. Riot police with batons fired tear gas and water cannons to block their march to the center of the capital. The protesters called their march a citizens' campaign. Waving the national flag, they chanted slogans supporting former king. Now, the protesters claimed that ever since the monarchy was scrapped, successive governments have failed to ensure development in the country. There have been quotes like, "We love our king and country more than our lives." These were chanted by the crowd at the protest. They also demanded that Nepal be declared a Hindu state. Taiwan's main opposition Nationalist Party has announced its vice presidential candidate, indicating that unity efforts for a cross-party alliance to challenge the ruling Democratic Progressive Party have fractured former legislator and cabinet member Chow Shao-kang. Now, he will be the presidential candidate's running mate in the January polls. The announcement comes days after the DPP announced former de facto ambassador to the US, Bikim Xiao, as its vice presidential candidate. The parties are largely divided over their relations with China. The outcome of the election could have a major effect on ties between Beijing and Washington, as differences over Taiwan are a major flashpoint in US-China relations. Fresh tension erupted in the Korean peninsula after North Korea claimed it will deploy new military hardware along the military demarcation line that separates it from the south. This after Seoul partially pulled back from a 2018 agreement designed to ease tensions along the border. Now, Seoul has also vowed to increase its intelligence and surveillance along the demilitarized zone, or the DMZ. The announcement came in response to North Korea launching its first ever spy satellite on Tuesday. French President Emmanuel Macron inaugurated an investment project of the Danish pharmaceutical company Novo Nordisk. The €2.1 billion project will be based in west of Paris, and Macron pitched the project as a sign of newly restored French industrial competitiveness. He praised France as a major destination for foreign investments, made attractive by a string of labor and taxation laws passed by his government, where Novo already employs over 2,000 people. It produces insulin in France. Senegalese president inaugurated the regional headquarters of the United Nations near capital Dakar. The United Nations House will also be dedicated to the wider region of West and Central Africa. The complex will house the 34 UN entities currently based in Senegal and their 2,400 employees. Now, the construction of the regional headquarters began in 2019 at a cost of $291 million. Ecuador's youngest ever president, Daniel Noboa, assumed the office today. After taking oath as the new president, Noboa administered the oath of office to his cabinet members. He also met his Colombian counterpart, Gustavo Petro, and the Brazilian vice president. After the swearing-in, 35-year-old Noboa has assumed office at a time when the country is gripped by drug war. Drug violence has led to 3,600 murders this year alone, as reported by the Ecuadorian Observatory of Organized Crime. Australian towns are grappling with a rat menace. Thousands of rats are invading tropical fishing towns in northern Australia. Thousands of rodents, dead and alive, have washed up on the beaches in Queensland. Overwhelmed residents are clearing piles of dead rats at the beaches every morning. The rodents have even reached the Gulf town of Karumba and Normanton. The native long-haired rats harass pets, clamber over boats and strip cars of their wiring. This year, after a bumper wet season in inland Australia, they are spreading over hundreds of kilometers in their hunt for new crops. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau welcomed European Council President Charles Michel and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. This is for a two-day summit, and at the summit they will be discussing the conflicts in West Asia and Ukraine, along with artificial intelligence and clean development. During the welcoming ceremony, Trudeau informed that Canada will join the European Union's research and innovation funding program called Horizon Europe. Ahead of the UN climate conference in Dubai next week, the United Nations Secretary General visited Antarctica along with the Chilean president. Now, the visit aimed to raise awareness on climate change. The two leaders arrived at Chile's presidential Air Force Base before the two leaders visited the Collins and Nelson glaciers. They also spotted to see penguins and other native species. The United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres will speak on his experience during the climate summit COP28. World leaders are set to convene for the annual conference, keeping in mind the Paris Agreement goal of restricting the global warming levels to 1.5 degrees Celsius. The government of Peru released a report claiming the country lost 56% of its tropical glaciers in the last 6 decades due to climate change. The report used satellite imagery till 2020 to show that 2,084 glaciers cover about 405 square miles in Peru, compared to 926 square miles of ice and snow back in 1962. According to the National Institute of Research of Mountain Glaciers and Ecosystems, Peru holds 68% of world's tropical glaciers, and rising temperatures have led to melting that risk flooding. Intense and heavy rains caused massive destruction in southern Brazil. An apartment building collapsed on Thursday due to the rains, forcing residents to evacuate their houses. No casualties have been reported so far. The evacuees have been sheltered in a school gym due to the rain fury. Many residential buildings in Brazil have developed cracks. The struggle against inflation intensifies in Japan as the core consumer price index rose 2.9% in October, slightly below economists' expectations. With the rate persistently exceeding the Bank of Japan's 2% target for 19 months, speculation grows that the central bank may abandon its negative interest rate policy and yield curve control. However, the BOJ insists current inflation is driven by global factors, not sustainable domestic demand. Analysts eye the upcoming policy meeting on December 19th for potential shifts. Amazon's $1.4 billion acquisition of robot vacuum maker iRobot is poised to secure unconditional approval from EU antitrust regulators. Now, this move comes amid global scrutiny of big tech acquisitions and concerns over data concentration. The European Commission had previously cautioned Amazon about potential competition reduction in the robot vacuum market. The EU decision is expected by February 14th. Amazon and the Commission have refrained from commenting on the matter. Brent crude futures staged a comeback in Asian trade, gaining 0.4% amid speculation on OPEC plus deliberations for further production cuts. Meanwhile, US WTI saw a 0.5% dip attributed to a public holiday. Both eye their first weekly rise in 5, anticipating OPEC plus actions to balance markets into 2024. The unexpected postponement of the OPEC plus meeting to November 30th initially caused Brent to drop 4%, WTI by 5%. In China, oil demand growth may ease due to a property sector crunch.